Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining the December Trending Topics webinar, SNAP Ed and Farm to School. We will give people another minute or two to hop on, and then we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you again for joining us for this webinar today, the December Trending Topics webinar, SNAP Ed and Farm to School. Before we get started, a few housekeeping reminders. This webinar will be recorded and archived for future viewing in the National Farm to School Network resource database. You will also receive a link to access the recording in a follow-up email and links to the resources shared by our speakers today. All attendees are in listen-only mode. As questions arise, please feel free to enter those into the question box on your control panel. We will have plenty of time for questions and answers from our panelists at the end of the session. My name is Hannah McCandless, the Network and Partnerships Fellow with the National Farm to School Network. Also on the webinar today, we have Lacey Stevens, NFSN's Program Manager, and we will be facilitating the webinar together today. NFSN's Trending Topics webinars are monthly webinars open to the public aimed at highlighting trends, best practices, and stories of farm to school and ECE successes from our partners across the country. Today, we'll start by providing a brief background on the National Farm to School Network for those of you joining us for the first time, and share some information about upcoming National Farm to School events. We will also talk about a SNAP Ed toolkit, and then we'll hear from our two presenters today. There will be ample time for questions at the end of the webinar. Again, please feel free to put questions in the question box as they come up, and we will get to as many as we can at the end. Farm to School is a broad range of strategies and activities that connect communities with local food and local food producers by changing the food purchasing and education practices of schools and early care and education sites. While every farm to school program looks somewhat different, they generally include one of the three core elements of farm to school, which are procurement, which includes the local purchase and use of food in cafeterias or snacks, education, which aims at getting students involved in educational activities related to agriculture, food, health, or nutrition, and school gardens, which focuses on getting students engaged in hands-on learning through gardening. Farm to school is a win-win-win situation where kids win, farmers win, and communities win. You can see from this visual that the National Farm to School Network is truly built on a network model, a network of organizations and individuals across the country working toward and advancing farm to school and ECE. The National Farm to School Network is an information, advocacy, and networking hub for communities working to bring local food sourcing, school gardens, and food and agriculture education into schools and early care and education settings. Through our network, We are able to connect people to resources, people to people, and people to policy. Now we'll be hearing from Lacey to talk about our SNAP Ed toolkit and more. Lacey?
Next slide, please, Hannah. Great. Before we jump into our SNAP Ed toolkit discussion and hear from our wonderful speakers, Hannah, you can advance to the next slide, please. I'd like to invite you to some additional upcoming learning opportunities and webinars presented by the National Farm to School Network. This month, we have coming up our National Farm to School Network Farm to Early Care and Education quarterly webinar, our National Farm to School Network policy webinar, and coming up in February, we'll have our next in the Trending Topics webinar series focusing on food waste and farm to school. So you'll be able to access and register for all of these webinars via the links that are now being put in your chat box. Next slide, please, Hannah. We'd also like to invite you to our upcoming 9th National Farm to Cafeteria Conference that will be held in April of 2018 in Cincinnati, Ohio. This biennial event will convene more than 1,000 diverse stakeholders all working together to source local food for institutional cafeterias, as well as foster a culture of food and agricultural literacy across the country. You can find out more and actually submit an application for a scholarship right now at farmtoschool.org/conference. Next slide, please, Hannah. Great. So with that background and a little bit of knowledge about what Farm to School is and what the National Farm to School Network does, we'd like to jump into our focus for today, which is looking at the linkages and overlapping opportunities between SNAP Ed and Farm to School. So the purpose of this webinar is to really create a platform to hear our partners from across the country share their examples about the opportunities and intersections of SNAP Ed and Farm to School, and hear about the role that Farm to School can play in achieving the goals of SNAP Ed in these communities and states across the country. So to get us started, I just wanted to take a quick peek into the newest version of the SNAP Ed Toolkit, this interactive resource that I'm sure many of you are well aware of, available online, that offers evidence-based interventions and evaluations used in SNAP Ed programming across the country. And I'd like to highlight a few of the many sample examples of how farm to school content is included in this toolkit. And the first I'd like to highlight is you'll see here that Farm to School itself is highlighted and identified in the toolkit as an evidence-based intervention to promote increased access to healthy foods and educational opportunities. So in addition to those three elements of Farm to School, the gardening, the procurement, and the education that Hannah discussed, there are numerous other Farm to School activities that can support PSE interventions, from mini-grant programs for building school gardens to linking farmers to school districts, building Farm to School coalitions, hosting Farm to School trainings. So many of these different and diverse Farm to School interventions and opportunities can fit within these recommendations from the SNAP Ed Toolkit. Next slide, please, Hannah. So some other specific interventions that are incorporating Farm to School and Farm to Early Care and Education that you might be familiar with is the Go Knapsack program, which is an online self-evaluation and educational tool that supports early care and education facilities in increasing the quality of the nutrition and physical activity environments. We're excited to share that coming up this spring, Go Knapsack will actually be releasing a Farm to Early Care and Education specific self-assessment and learning tool module to help further support the implementation of Farm to ECE in this evidence-based and evaluatory way. Next slide, please, Hannah. Another example cited in the SNAP Ed Toolkit comes from our partners at the Food Trust in Philadelphia. The Healthy Kindergarten Initiative is a direct education and PSE change intervention that concludes an integrated, holistic approach to educating children and their caregivers about making healthy food choices and being physically active. Next slide, please, Hannah. You'll also see an example from California in the Riverside Unified School District Farmers Market Salad Bar program. So this program not only brings in fresh, healthy foods to the farmers market on a daily basis, but also creates and highlights and cites opportunities to look at what this impact is having on small farmers in their community as well. So this not only incorporates the salad bar and that local food provision and procurement, but also educational components within the schools. Next slide, please, Hannah. And then a final example we see is Harvest of the Month. So Harvest of the Month is present in states all across the country. This specific example, again, comes from the California resources that were designed as a social marketing intervention that adapts to multiple settings, including schools and early care and education settings. So these Harvest of the Month curricular pieces incorporate multiple levels of farm to school initiatives, from the local procurement to the education and even gardening recommendations. So with that, preface about where farm to school can fit into these SNAP-Ed interventions, I'd like to turn it over to Hannah to introduce our guest speakers to get a deep dive into their farm to school focused interventions.
Thank you so much, Lacey. Today, we have 4 presenters from 2 different states. We'll have 3 from Florida. Starting, we have Tiffany Torres. Tiffany Torres is a food systems specialist with the University of Florida IFAS Extension's Family Nutrition Program. She builds capacity for farm-to-school programming and strengthens the connections Floridians have with their food by assisting SNAP eligible sites with policy, systems, and environmental changes. Tiffany has passions for environmental education, community organizing, and sustainable agriculture in order to co-create more equitable food systems. Next, we have Lauren Hedrick. Lauren Hedrick is a registered dietitian and nutritionist and the program coordinator for the University of Florida IFAS Extension's Family Nutrition Program and the SNAP-Ed implementing agency for the state of Florida. She earned her master's degree from the University of Florida and has spent her career focusing on school wellness, family nutrition, and improving the environments in which we live, work, and play. Next, we have Kelly Brew. Kelly has been working to connect the local food system with those in need for over 20 years through her work with local nonprofits, including Florida Organic Growers and the Greenhouse Catholic Worker. Helping make the connection between a healthy local food system and healthy community is both a passion and a really great job. Next, we have Carol Smathers, who is from Ohio, and she is an extension field specialist in youth nutrition and wellness and an assistant professor at The Ohio State University. She holds master's degrees in education and in public health. She co-directs the Ohio 4-H Healthy Living Advocate Program that encourages youth to speak out for healthier options where they live, learn, work, and play. As director of Ohio Farm to School, she provides resources and training for statewide stakeholders seeking to produce, serve, and teach about local foods. And now we're going to go ahead and jump in with our first presentation from Florida.
Great, thank you. This is Lauren Hedrick, so I'm going to go ahead and start with a little bit of an overview of the Family Nutrition Program, how things are set up here, and then I will turn it over to Tiffany and to Kelly so they can give you some information on how exactly they implement these programs out in the counties and out throughout the state of Florida. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a background. So Florida does have the 3rd highest SNAP population or food stamp eligible population here in the nation, and approximately 1 out of every Floridians qualifies for SNAP. And also, we've got some pretty staggering statistics related to obesity and obesity-related diseases. 1 in 4 are obese. 37% of adults of Floridians report eating less than 1 fruit or vegetable per day. And we're also seeing some of these numbers start to spill over into our youth populations as well. We're seeing type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and then also some pretty sad statistics related to fruit and vegetable intake with their kids as well. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here with these statistics, but these are definitely, this is the reason why farm to school programs and figuring out ways to implement these farm to school programs with as many individuals as we can is really important. Next slide, please. And so the University of Florida IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program is the SNAP-Ed implementing agency here in Florida. And so we target individuals that qualify for SNAP. And so we are currently implemented in 40 counties throughout the state of Florida through our county cooperative extension offices. And so our mission with the Family Nutrition Program is to help limited resource families in Florida access more nutritious food choices on a budget and adopt healthier eating and physical activity habits to reduce the risk of obesity and chronic disease. So everything that we do as part of our program, the nutrition education efforts, the PSEs that they mentioned earlier as part of SNAP-Ed, this is all in order to help these low-income populations to eat healthier and to be more physically active. Next slide, please. And there's a lot going on here and probably a little difficult for some of you to see this, but this is just our infographic from this past year. And the most important for you all part of this infographic, I would say, is that middle section right near that fruit bowl. So over last year, so fiscal year 2016, we helped schools, our farm to school team helped schools procure over 230,000 pounds of Florida-grown produce, which was then served within 407 schools throughout the state of Florida. And the really great thing with Florida is that our growing season aligns so well with the school, when the kids are in school. So that really helps us to be able to maximize, how we're procuring those fruits and vegetables. And then our farm to school team also helped to put in 111 school gardens last year and 42 community gardens. So some really big efforts there related to local procurement and school and community gardens from our farm to school team. Also on the bottom of this infographic, there's some other information I want to point out is how important our partners in the community has been. And I'm sure Tiffany will mention this and Kelly will mention this in making these efforts happen. While SNAP-Ed, the Family Nutrition Program as part of SNAP-Ed does have a really robust farm to school and farm to community program, it could not be possible without our volunteers. We had over 25,000 community volunteer hours last year. Without the help with donated materials and supplies, we were able to secure over $430,000 worth of donated supplies last year. And then also the Greater Cooperative Extension, their expertise has been critical for helping to move some of these projects forward. Our horticulture agents, our small farms teams here within Extension. So if you do not currently work with your cooperative extension offices in your state, I highly encourage you to reach out to them. The expertise that they can help provide you is just invaluable. Next slide, please. So with the Family Nutrition Program, or SNAP-Ed here in Florida, Dr. Carla Shelnut is principal investigator, which is a term you may not be familiar with if you're not within the university. But so she is the one that oversees the Family Nutrition Program. And then we have a state team that functions out of the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And so that is myself. And then some other, got a farm to school and community specialist that helps provide support to our farm to school teams. And then everyone else out in the community as well. So we also have a public health team that provides the PSE supports along with our farm to school and community teams. And then the SNAP-Ed program, or FNP, is actually implemented. Our boots on the ground is our staff that are in each of those 40 county extension offices. So within each of those offices, we have nutrition educators and other staff that help to implement the program, actually going out, they working with the schools, farmers, other partners to really make this happen. Next slide, please. So within the last couple years, SNAP-Ed has been expanded to include policy, systems, and environmental activities. So prior to that, it has been historically mainly just direct nutrition education. And then with the addition of these PSEs is really where our farm to school team grew from, and these efforts really started to stem from. Next slide, please. And so as you can see, here's just some numbers of our reach over the past 3 years and how that has really grown in the areas of PSEs. So our nutrition education numbers have grown slightly over the past few years, but our PSEs, and so those are the things such as the school and community gardens, working with schools on local procurement policies, working with the schools on school wellness policies, that sort of thing. So that has really grown over the past few years. Next slide, please. And so now I will go ahead and turn it over to Tiffany, and she can give you a little bit more information about how our farm to school and community team functions.
Thank you, Lauren. So first I'm going to go into detail about our mission. In collaboration with our state and national partners, we will create policy systems and environmental changes that facilitate healthy eating and physical activity habits for Florida's limited resource residents. Next slide. And here's a little bit about our structure. So Lauren gave some background on this. We have a faculty advisor for our farm to school and community team with the Horticultural Sciences Department at University of Florida that helps keep us connected to current research and trending topics in sustainable agriculture and farm to school and other such topics. We also have a state coordinator who supervises our food hub employees as well as our regional food system specialist. We have 3 food hub employees who do garden and food prep work, which we'll get into our food hubs in a little bit into detail. And then we have 10 regional food system specialists throughout the state who are really the boots on the ground, as Lauren described, doing this policy systems and environmental work. Next slide, please. And so the first realm that we work in is really school and community garden support. So with our SNAP Ed grant, we can provide funding for gardens, $300 to reinvigorate existing gardens and $500 to establish new gardens. And these can be school or community gardens, as Lauren mentioned. And in addition to our funding, we offer garden consultation in person and expertise on topics such as construction, planting, harvesting, irrigation, and pest management, things of that nature. We also provide indirect garden education to students at the schools, as well as community members at the community gardens. And lastly, we facilitate taste tests in classrooms and cafeterias using the produce that we grew in our school and community gardens. Next slide, please. And the second realm that we work in is cafeteria and school wellness. So one of our big pushes is smarter lunchroom movements. And this can be trainings with just one school, or it could be trainings for an entire school district, depending on the goals of the food service director in that district. We also work with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to help schools on their certification towards Healthier U.S. School Challenge so that they can maybe get additional funding for school wellness goals that they have. We serve on student health advisory committees and other student health coalitions like SHACs or SHWACs, and really try and stay connected to what's going on in the school environment and connect all the dots between all the different players. We also assist County Food and Nutrition Services and Department of Agriculture with procurement efforts of locally grown products. And this is, like Lauren said, a pretty big one for us and a key partnership with our state agencies to get this work done and really connect the farmers to those opportunities. And lastly, we coordinate National Farm to School Network events like the Cucumber Crunch this last October for National Farm to School Month. Next slide, please. In addition to those things, we also provide trainings to an array of other audiences. So we work with farmers to provide food safety trainings on safe handling practices. We also are working with the Department of Agriculture to create a training for schools that want to do more garden to cafeteria work and need some help with their food safety plan. We work with teachers and community garden leaders who have gardens and want more technical gardening skills, community outreach and development skills, curriculum connections like Harvest of the Month, and much more. And then finally, we support our farmers market managers and our vendors at farmers markets by making sure that they're accepting SNAP EBT at the markets, Fresh Access Bucks, which doubles SNAP at the farmers markets for SNAP recipients, and then SNAP Gardens, which is a new program for us, but we're trying to push that one in terms of encouraging SNAP recipients to use their SNAP dollars to buy edible plants at the farmers markets, and we will provide trainings for them so they can really grow their own garden, grow their own food, and be more sustainable. Next slide, please. And so we have 2 food hubs in the state of Florida that we partner with. And the first is located in Gainesville, Florida. This is the Alachua County Farm to School to Work Hub, which Kelly Brew will talk on in just a moment. But this is really a district-wide program that focuses on ESE youth professional development through hands-on training, both indoors in their hydroponics greenhouse, as well as outdoors in their gardens. And our SNAP Ed contribution to this project is that we provide 2 full-time staff members that coordinate some of these efforts alongside the Alachua County Farm to School team that's employed by the district. And our second and newest food hub is located near Orlando, Florida, which is Ocoee High School Food Hub. And this is a partnership between Ocoee High School for Rivers Foundation, which for those of you who don't know, it's a local chain, which is a smokehouse and a farm, and Family Nutrition Program. And the Four Rivers Foundation funded the hydroponic greenhouse at this high school in order to grow food for taste tests in the cafeteria, to connect kids to nutrition education and gardening experiences. So our SNAP Ed contribution there is that we provide funds for the plants and the seeds that are grown in the greenhouse and then used in the taste test, as well as a staff person to manage the greenhouse and support teachers at the school. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Brew, and she is going to talk about how SNAP Ed has helped grow capacity for the Alachua County Food Hub successes.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about the Alachua County Food Hub, known locally as the Farm to School to Work Hub. Our program is a community collaboration between 2 school departments, the Food and Nutrition Services Department and the Exceptional Student Education Department, with a vital amount of support from the Farm to School and community team of FNP. Next slide, please. Hannah mentioned that while every Farm to School program has the goal of serving more local food and school food programs, but each has its own flavor, so to speak, based on the unique community it's a part of. For our region, with a growing season that mirrors to a great extent the school year, we have found that purchasing directly from local farms and growing on school grounds has helped significantly boost the availability of local products on the lunch line. It's also offered a great experiential nutrition education opportunity, as well as agriculture awareness and horticulture skills. In addition, we happen to be a part of a school system where students with disabilities are part of a program growing food on grow poles for a local restaurant when we started. Connecting with that program at the outset of the Farm to School program helped us not only to expand the reach of our project, but also to add a new benefit to those students. Next slide. The collaboration with the Exceptional Student Education Department's Growing Education and Training Program, known as GAT, benefits students in the program and throughout our district. It provides job and life skills training for students with disabilities while making it possible to provide more produce for the lunchrooms. Here you see students, this is the king of pumpkins who love to grow pumpkins. Students take a particular interest in different aspects of growing, and they're able to do it to their skill level. Next slide. In the 3 years we've been working together, we have gone from a dilapidated 1970s greenhouse to one that produces 150 heads of lettuce and up to 75 pounds of cucumbers every week between October and April. We've also been able to expand from one small school garden to an acre of outdoor production, a site for students to learn to grow, to teach teachers interested in having a school garden at their school, and to provide a small farm experience to students visiting on field trips. Our school garden program has grown from 2 school gardens to growing for the lunchrooms to 15 school gardens growing around the district directly for the cafeterias. Next slide. The collaboration with FNP and a partnership with the University of Florida Dietetics Department has helped develop a taste test program where students try out locally grown products and regularly get to meet the farmers who grow them. Recently, our district was awarded a food truck by the Florida Department of Agriculture. This primarily serves high schools, which traditionally have a low rate of school lunch participation. And because of its small size and alternative menu, it's offered a real opportunity to test some products that are particular to our region. They have served things like sweet potato fries and long bean noodles, Seminole pumpkin soup, locally grown kale salad. We can test it in the high schools, and if they like it, there's a pretty good chance it'll be successful in the elementary schools as well. Next slide. Nutrition education is an important part of our Farm to School program. Students accustomed to eating fast food that consists primarily of bread and meat need a little coaxing to try vegetables, especially those they may not be used to. The Family Nutrition Program nutrition educators are a part of every field trip, helping students prepare what they've harvested from the garden and teaching them about the components of a healthy meal using My Plate as a guide. In the setting of a garden, where students have learned how to help things grow, they seem particularly engaged in learning about how to help their growing bodies thrive as well with good nutrition. We have also developed a lot of promotional materials to help students make good choices on the lunch line and then consume what they've chosen. Farm and farmer trading cards are one example. We offer a special product as a harvest of the month on a regular basis. Students who choose the product are given a card featuring the farmer who grew it or the product itself. On the back of the card, students can read about the farmer, things like what they wanted to be when they grew up, why they love farming, what their favorite food is. And on the product card, they learn about nutrition in the fruit or vegetable they're trying and how it helps your body grow. The next slide. It's an acre of growing and 15 little school gardens, and it's a classroom of students with disabilities. But the reach of the program has been phenomenal in the 3 years since it started to grow. Last year, 7,500 pounds of vegetables were grown on school grounds. 12,000 pounds of produce from local farms was packaged by students and served on lunch lines. Over 11,000 students were offered school garden produce, and 14,000 were offered products from local farms during the growing season. A recent UF study showed that students in schools in our county consumed 37% more vegetables and 11% more fruit after the Farm to School program was rolled out in their school. This happened because of the number of community partnerships we have helping our program succeed. Our collaboration with FNP has been a game changer and has made a real difference in the quality of food our students are consuming and their understanding of the connection between a healthy food system and their healthy bodies. Thanks. I think that's it from Florida.
Looks like we have one more.
Yeah, so as Kelly mentioned, our community partners are valuable to making these efforts happen. So they're helping us to expand access to healthy local foods and nutrition education experiences. And so those individuals that we work with from health departments, food banks and food pantries, farmers markets, the school administrators, food and nutrition services, Head Start programs and early child care education partners, and then also, as I mentioned earlier, extension personnel. So this work would not be able to happen without all of these individuals helping to make this possible. Next slide, please. And so we will stick around to the end for some questions, but please feel free to reach out to us at any time if there's anything you'd like more information on, from the farmer trading cards that Kelly mentioned, just to how we maybe help make some of these things happen. You can visit our website at ufnp.org or follow us on Instagram. And then also, like I said, feel free to reach out to our state food system specialist, Marie Kessler, at that email address listed here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you who just spoke. Much appreciated. Cannot wait to hear some of the questions for everyone. Next up, we have The Ohio State University, and our presenter is Carol Smathers. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Hannah and Lacey. It's really been it really is a pleasure to be a part of this important discussion today, and I have learned a lot from the Florida team. So I'm really glad to be on this webinar today. Next slide. Ohio Farm to School is based out of Ohio State University Extension, and as a part of a land-grant university like the Florida team, our mission is research and teaching. We have specialists in 4 program areas, and in each of our state's 88 counties. The program area that Farm to School program is based in is the Family and Consumer Sciences area. This is also the program area that's the implementing entity for the SNAP-Ed program in the state of Ohio. And I want to point out again, as you did at the beginning of the webinar, that Ohio is the local host state for the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference coming up in April. Next slide. When we think about how SNAP-Ed helps to promote the procuring, serving, and teaching about local foods in Ohio, there's 3 main areas. The first is a lot of, very similar to what Lauren shared, our county level activities, where our SNAP-Ed staff are providing nutrition education and school garden support. They are out in communities leveraging partnerships to maximize the use of resources. When I asked a number of our SNAP-Ed specialists how they are involved with Farm to School, one of them recently told me, in our county, SNAP-Ed is working with the local Head Start to expand their gardening program and is looking for ways to support their efforts. SNAP-Ed will provide small garden tools, and they've contacted local vocational school to assist with building of raised beds for a section of the playground. So I think that's an example of how there's these decentralized activities going on throughout the state due to the work of SNAP-Ed. The third, and the one area that I want to talk the most about, is a research project called Building Capacity for Obesity Prevention. This is a research and resource development project that's based out of Case Western University up in the Cleveland area, and SNAP-Ed is a major partner on this project. Next slide. The Building Capacity for Obesity Prevention Project, or BCOP as we call it, is funded primarily by the Centers for Disease Control through Case Western University, through their Prevention Research Center, and also supported by SNAP-Ed through OSU. The main goal of this project is to develop web-based tools to help community nutrition practitioners, so SNAP-Ed practitioners, and public health practitioners to choose and plan PSE interventions. There are 4 main areas to the BCOP project: farmers markets, healthy food retail, healthy eating policies in early childhood education, and the 4th is Farm to School. Next slide. Next slide, please. As I think Lacey mentioned earlier, the SNAP-Ed guidance requires the use of multi-level strategies and encourages policy system and environment change approaches, or PSEs. And this is to obtain more sustainable and lasting health behavior changes. We have found that many practitioners are confused by the concept of PSEs, and they may find tackling policy and environment change daunting. So the idea behind this project is to provide tools that practitioners or teams of practitioners can use to assess their organization's readiness and their community's readiness and capacity to implement a community nutrition PSE. And then it actually provides tailored recommendations and provides a set of 3 recommendations and resources for targeting those specific recommendations. The assessment tool was developed through a very lengthy process, and it's based on data from 9 different counties in our state, 4 rural and 5 urban, 18 interviews, 23 focus groups that included 47 coalition members and 120 SNAP-Ed participants or SNAP-Ed eligible participants. And this yielded some really rich information about the factors perceived to influence successful implementation of farm-to-school PSEs. Next slide. This is the website where the assessment tool and the other resources are available. So you could, if you're online now, you can go to pseready.org, and from there select PSE interventions, click on Farm to School, and if you click on Learn about Farm to School PSE changes, you come to this page, which is just a compendium of toolkits and resources and directories and other fact sheets and things. And it also has links to 3 videos. So the BCOP developed 20 different videos that feature public health and SNAP-Ed practitioners, real people in Ohio who have tackled obstacles and or leveraged resources to implement PSEs in our state. So 3 of the 20 videos are directly focused on farm to school, and I'll give you a few more details about each of those videos. The assessment tool that I mentioned in the previous slide underwent beta testing during the fall this past fall, and will be available for wider use in the summer of 2018. But as I mentioned, the videos are available now, as are the other resources listed on the screen in front of you. Next slide. The first Farm to School video highlights resources and partnerships needed for a successful school garden, and this focuses on a garden at an elementary school in Toledo, Ohio. It's actually a 5-acre plot that's managed in partnership between OSU Extension specialists, SNAP-Ed staff, and volunteer master gardeners. And in cooperation with these 3 groups, they are able to bring every 4th grader into the garden each year to work in the garden, learn about growing, and then they have related activities like taste testings. And they say that their salad day and their potato soup day are the 2 favorites. Next slide. The second Farm to School video looks at lessons learned and the resources, time, talents, space, logistics needed to keep the school garden running year-round. And the master gardeners do talk about things like how the garden incorporates aspects of the school curriculum. Next slide. The third Farm to School video in this series on the BCOP website focuses on partnerships that strengthen Farm to School PSE projects. It again looks at how OSU Extension specialists, including Family and Consumer Sciences and Agriculture and Natural Resources, partner with SNAP-Ed staff, with nonprofit programs such as Toledo Grows, and with school staff and volunteers to maximize the effectiveness of farm-to-school activities. The next slide, please. And finally, the OSU Extension SNAP-Ed program will soon launch a major project. This is the landing page for Celebrate Your Plate. This is a social marketing campaign with the primary objective of increasing the amount of fruits and vegetables consumed by SNAP-Ed participants. This is aiming to change the way that participants look at fruits and vegetables, how they can recognize them, how they know to prepare them, and knowing where to get them. It includes links to directories of farmers markets and community gardens, and it encourages the use of in-season produce. And we will be in as this project progresses and goes along, we will be looking for additional ways to include messages about local foods and incorporating local foods in cafeterias. I think there's just one more slide. Oh, did I mention that we are the local hosts for the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference? So please come to learn more about what's going on with Farm to School in Ohio this April, as well as what's going on with your colleagues around the country. That's it.
Thank you so much, Carol, for sharing. Now we have about 14 minutes for questions. And so if you have any questions, please pop them in the question bar on your screen, and we'll go ahead and get started. We'll get to as many as we can. The first question I'd like to ask for all of our presenters is, do you have any recommendations for resources to help food service directors connect with local procurement? And also, just so you all know, we do have lots of resources on the NFSN resource database and extensive procurement resources offered by NFSN if you want to check those out. But do any of our presenters have any recommendations for resources related to those?
This is Kelly, and I would say that definitely those two resources that you mentioned have been really helpful, as well as connecting to the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agriculture and through FNP, that they've offered us a lot of good connections with local farms and ideas for how to connect with our distributor as well.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to that?
I would agree that Extension is a great resource. Start with your state, at your state and your local offices. They know who the producers are, what's available in your counties, and as she said, work through your distributor and find out what they're already procuring locally and what they could add to their local procurement.
Thank you, Carol. Our next question: do schools require garden-grown produce to be GAP certified?
I can answer that for our county as well, that we do not require it to be GAP certified, but we have been very diligent in following the GAP requirements that are significant for a small school garden. In general, the way that our food nutrition department understands it is that, as far as liability, we're all very concerned about health risks for small children. And the fact that these are grown locally, in the garden right next to the cafeteria, and that students are following food safety procedures makes that food essentially very safe. We require that all school gardeners have food safety training and that they agree to follow those procedures, and the lunchroom is also educated about making sure that the procedures they're using in the preparation of the produce ensures that it's safe. So while we don't require the certification, we do follow the guidelines.
And I would just like to add one thing to that. So for SNAP Ed dollars, they should not be, the food that is grown in the school gardens that is funded, if these school gardens are funded with SNAP Ed dollars, that food cannot be served in the lunchroom as part of either school lunch or school breakfast program. And that is a federal, a rule from the federal government.
Right, and just to echo Lauren's sentiment, I think that's where SNAP Ed really has a sweet spot, in that we as staff members can really work closely with food nutrition services at the school to develop those food safety plans, especially for if it's just one school and not necessarily a robust district-wide program like Kelly described in Alachua County. So really just using the people power provided by SNAP Ed where you can't fill in the dollars like Lauren mentioned.
Thank you. Looks like no one else is going to mention anything about that. So let's go ahead and hop on to the next question. This one is for Carol. And is the PSE read assessment tool meant to be used only at a local level, or could it be used at a state level?
That's a great question. I believe it could be used at any level because it's designed to be at a organization for an organization to complete rather than an individual. It's going to talk about things like staff time at the local school for doing farm to school. So in that sense, some of the specific factors that are included in the assessment may not apply at the state level. But I would recommend taking a look at it, because I think there's going to be some general factors that will apply and that will be of assistance in determining, maybe what direction might be effective to go for farm to school PSEs. But we really did design it for the local level.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question is for Florida. Can you all share the UF study on increased FV intake that you all mentioned?
Yes, that study that was cited showed that it was a plate waste study, meaning that it wasn't only the amount of food the students chose to put on their lunch plate, but what they consumed, and that the Farm to School program had significantly increased the consumption of fruit and vegetables, of all the fruit and vegetables the students were served, not only the Farm to School produce. That it raised their awareness, it seems to be, about the good of choosing that particular product.
And that study was just published in the Journal of Nutrition Education and Behavior, if you're interested in reading more about that.
Thank you. Our next question is back to Ohio. Before you all developed your own social marketing campaign for SNAP Ed, did you look at other state SNAP Ed social marketing campaigns to see what they had to offer versus creating a new campaign?
I was not part of that development team directly, but I believe that they absolutely did look at other. Did you have a specific question related to what other states had offered?
If you can remember any of the best practices for that, any of the states that really stuck out as good examples. Do you remember any of those?
Yeah, again, I was not part of that social marketing campaign team, so I was not involved in the review of other states. I could put you in contact with them, but I don't know directly.
Well, if you would be willing to put the email address or contact info in the chat box and send it out to everyone whenever you have a second, that'd be great.
Sure.
Our next question: how are you sharing these types of SNAP Ed interventions pertaining to farm to school with your peers in other states? Are there conferences you all attend or SNAP Ed implementing agency peer sharing networks?
So I will speak, this is Lauren, I will speak a little bit to that. There is, and I do not have the website offhand, but the University of Tennessee put together a large PSE resource, and one major portion of that are the farm to school efforts happening here in Florida. And I apologize for not having that information offhand, but I'm sure if you were to Google University of Tennessee and PSE, that might come up. But again, so that is one way that we've shared some of those resources, and I'd imagine it's probably part of the SNAP Ed toolkit as well. So again, I apologize for not having that offhand. But we also share this information at regional information sharing sessions. And Tiffany, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add as far as any conferences that you all have attended to share some of this information.
Yeah, and the note of conferences, I'll be presenting at the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference, so come say hi. There'll be a poster presentation on a statewide garden educator training series that we're launching in Florida as a part of our SNAP Ed initiative, and also a workshop on how we're trying to better integrate equity into the work that we're doing with SNAP Ed. So that's just one example. I'm also pretty connected to the Food Corps Network and really trying to share amongst the alumni there, and yeah, other national conferences as able.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to make a comment on that? All right, our next question is, are SNAP Ed programs required to meet a specific ratio of PSE work versus direct education? And if so, how have these programs negotiated that?
So there is not a specific percentage of funds that are supposed to go towards direct education versus PSE that's coming down from the national level. There have been some numbers thrown out as far as budget, about 30 to 35% or so of the budget should go to some PSE efforts. But there is nothing that is written or set in stone related to that. There has just been more of an increase in efforts related to PSEs as time, over the last couple of years. However, it is important to keep in mind that with SNAP Ed, first and foremost, we should be providing nutrition education at our sites or with the partners that we are working with. So nutrition education really is the basis and the top priority for SNAP Ed, with PSEs really being there to support what we're doing. And a tagline that gets thrown around a lot is the idea behind PSEs to help make the healthy choice the easy choice. So it really is to enhance the nutrition education efforts.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on that?
Hannah, can I jump in and just make a comment about some of the questions that were asked earlier around using SNAP Ed garden grown produce in the school meal programs? And we have some information from some of our federal and regional USDA contacts that there's not necessarily a federal statute limiting that. So for more information on your local expectations and local implementation, contact your USDA Farm to School regional lead for some of those specific information. So just wanted to add that clarity.
Thank you.
And can I also add that part of a robust farm to school program combines a lot of different collaborations. So for us with the Alachua County Farm to School program, part of part of it is funded by SNAP Ed. The parts of the garden and the school gardens that are used for taste tests in schools where most of the students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. There are other parts, though, that are funded directly through food and nutrition services or through other grants that allow for that food to be in the lunchroom. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but definitely doable. The connection with the FNP program and the nutrition education and garden assistance they provide is really important to our program. But we also have other funding streams that allow us to be able to serve produce that we are growing in the lunchroom.
Thank you so much. And now it is 3 o'clock. We are at the end of our time. So I would like for you to look at your screens and see we have plenty of ways for you to connect with us on Facebook. There is the link to our Facebook, on Twitter at Farm to School, on Instagram at Farm to School. That's where you can find us on YouTube, National Farm to School Network. You can subscribe to our channel and see many of our webinars that we have on there. And you can also become a member at the National Farm to School Network through this link and get fun updates throughout the month. We'd like to thank our presenters for presenting today. Lots of wonderful information has been shared, and thank you all for coming.